What's up, my people? Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we're coming at you each and every week with a fresh weekend, a debrief, an effort to send biblical truth. What better way to do that than by the power of conversation? I'm one of your hosts, Caleb Pearson. Joining me in the host spotlight, Mr. Mark Francis. Mark, how are you?
What is up?
Happy pre-spring.
Happy
It's so nice outside.
Pre-spring.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Oh, yeah. Belated birthday, too.
JMU dude right here.
29 years old.
Holy cow.
Getting old. I'm just
Real old.
So many people are going to hate it when I say
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
my last year of my 20s, so all maturity from here on out, at least. That's the word on the street.
Or people to say you'll stay 29 forever.
Yes, exactly.
At least for the next 5 years.
Joining us, not first time.
I've done a few of these.
You've done a few of these. Yeah, he's a veteran. Micah Dirksen. Micah, thanks for being here, dude.
Yeah, good to be here.
You're on this teaching team, which I am also on. So I'm gonna, when we get to that little segment, I'm gonna mentally switch, and
Sure.
you're gonna host. For
But there's
like
no
3
Mark Carey
minutes.
today.
But there's no Mark Carey.
Yep.
More important things to deal with than us in a podcast booth.
Oh,
so,
stop.
we're gonna cover it for him. Micah's gonna answer all your deeply rooted theological questions, and then we'll go from there. So let's jump into a Sunday in review, Mark chapter 1. Francis, I'll come your way first, and
Yep.
Micah, let's just share what stood out to us as Mark was preaching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give my personal perspectives. I guess that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So being on the worship planning team, we plan through the whole service and think through what the teaching team has given us. And when we look at Mark 1, 29 through 39 is where we were, where there's just a lot of healings, demons being cast out, all kinds of action happening, and Jesus is just doing all kinds of cool miracles and stuff. And so the teaching team came to us as a worship team and said, yeah, here's the passage, God's power, right? Power of God is what we're going to be looking at. And so a lot of the songs led to that, which is amazing. And then Mark did a little pivot, which pausing there on verse 35 to say, but look at what Jesus did among all of the busyness, all the hustle and bustle of him working in Capernaum, doing his things, his miracles, and he was tired. And instead of saying, guys, I'm deucing out, I'm going to go take a nap somewhere, or I just need to get away, he goes and has time with the Father. And that's the emphasis of this passage. And that's where Mark honed in on, which brings in a great application of, man, where are we in our busyness of lives? By no way are we as busy as Jesus. And here he is going to spend time with the Father. So just, yeah, I mean, it's convicting because I don't do that. At least nearly not I should. And, even Mark admitted, Lisa just kind of taps him on the shoulder. Hey, did you have your quiet time today? That rung true as well of just like, okay, we need those reminders. And Jesus knew what fueled him, not his own selfish, personal, private time, but his time with the Father.
I love that practical example of the wife asking almost two
Right.
ways in which it can be asked. One is
Right.
logistically, were you able to? But then the other's like behaviorally, I think the answer is no, but were you able to? But yeah, I mean, you think about Jesus praying, and Mike, I'll come your way first as far as what stood out, but this is a dude who didn't even need to pray. Like, talk about communion with the Father.
He's constantly walking in the Spirit.
Yeah. And so to think he modeled that for us, and I appreciated Mark Carey's outline of just a busy life, time of prayer, and another busy day, time of prayer, and another busy day.
Yep.
We do the same thing, except we neglect the middle part. This specific passage in Mark is good because it actually doesn't seem to, yes, it crescendos to verse 39 where he kept doing all these things, but it is a cool passage where actually the halfway point is the emphasis, where Jesus is going to take time out of a daunting schedule to do that. So what stood out this weekend is from your perspective, Micah?
Two things. The first one is these physical pictures that we get of spiritual truth. So like Peter's mother or mother-in-law being healed and then choosing to serve. And Mark touched on, man, that's really what God has done for us. He's healed us and called us to a life with him and a life for him. And my mind was on that because our teaching team is a couple weeks ahead, and we were talking about what Mark will be preaching this Sunday on the leper. And there's another physical picture of spiritual truth where there's this outcast that Jesus comes to and heals and then calls him to do something. And it's very similar, our lives. We've been made well, like Peter's mother-in-law, in order to serve, kind of Ephesians 2, 8, 9, and 10. So I love all these pictures, and there's so many throughout Mark. And then the other thing was, just echoing what you guys mentioned about busyness of life. My wife, Taylor, and I, we just had a daughter.
Congratulations.
Allie, thank you.
Yeah.
Shout out to Allie.
Yeah, she's 5 weeks tomorrow. So I'm getting more sleep than my wife, but still not a ton. And we have twin boys that are 2.5. So
The bodyguards.
just a lot going on. Like last night, I was just thinking, get up around 5, 6, and then by the time I finally sat down, it was about 9:30 at night, and I just was reflecting, like, wow, I think I was just like go the whole day. And it's not unique to me. We all are busy, but the sermon was kind of rattling around in my brain, just like, and I was able, throughout the day, commune with the Lord, but then also convicted. Where was that intentionality to spend time with the Lord? Not because it's this legalistic approach, I have to do this, but just, again, I like Mark's emphasis, just ask the Lord for a desire. Because it's a privilege. Like, we can go to the Father. What a joy that is. And just asking the Lord, raise that value in my mind, convince me of the joy of this and the value of communing with you, so that I will be intentional.
So it's cool that you can relate to that video of Abby, who's one of our own, who's on the podcast many times.
Part of the September baby boom we had here.
Just how, the business of life. And she mentioned, man, I didn't realize how selfish I was. And I was really honest. And how, in our business of life, we can just think of ourselves. And I want what I want. And there's not this following Jesus perspective.
And it's not even just busyness and then taking time to pray. Like, that could be one application. Okay, amidst my busyness, make sure I make some time for Jesus. But also look at what his busyness was glorifying to God, and it was serving others. So also, Colossians 3:23 comes to mind in these verses. Whatever we're doing, let it glorify the Lord, and keep our focus there, so that we understand it's not ministry, and a mindset of a Christian. It should not be this clock in, clock out attitude. But for us, it easily, all three of us are on staff. For us, it easily could feel that way. So that was convicting as well.
Yeah, I've been loving these testimony videos, and I'm sure the rest of our congregation has too, or I hope so. And it's really interesting. Certain videos, hit home for different people. And like you mentioned, that video that Abby did with Gabe, like, for Taylor and I, that was just really encouraging for us, because we're in the same stage of life, experiencing the same things, walking in the same kind of selfishness, experiencing the same moments of, why won't this baby sleep? Help me, Lord. I need strength. So it's just really cool that the Lord can use different people in our body going through the same things.
And a few weeks ago, it was like Tim Sanford's mother-in-law, an older generation of the things that she goes through, and the struggles and the fears, and just every situation is going to have a pretty common answer. Just turn your attention to Jesus and off yourself. And that's the idea of the series, of how can we follow Jesus throughout not just one day of our life or 1 hour of our life, but all the time, like Jesus was modeling for us. And it's tough, right? But that's our call.
And it's easier to do. It's more effectively done when we know God, truly understand who he is, what he's after. All of these Mark passages, Micah alluded to this, the call to obedience is after deliverance. So Jesus works in their life, and then he asks them to serve and do something. He had every right to flip the script and say, well, if you do these things, then I'll heal you. But there isn't a call to obey or a command for any of these people until they've already been delivered. It's that old saying of Jesus doesn't clean his fish before he catches it. We are saved by his work, his efforts, and then we enter this walk of sanctification, and that's where the testimonies take shape, because following Jesus takes many shapes. I think we're fighting the culture of following Jesus is this amorphous, nose to the grindstone Christian walk, and everybody better get in line. But there's different life circumstances where Christ is working in different ways or convicting different sins and whatever's going on. And so from the teaching team perspective, those testimonies have been huge for us, because it's like, this is great that they're actually helping aid in the communication of what we're about to read, because that's what taking shape actually looks like.
I also, to that point, I appreciated Mark in the sermon. He didn't leave us with, okay, you need to wake up at 5:30 and do this for this time. Like, he didn't give us structure, and he didn't even tell us what works for him. What he left us with was this principle and raising the value of communing with the Father, and then allowing each of us to be led by the Spirit based on that biblical principle, how God wants to implement that in our own lives. Because what may work for someone may not work for someone else. But that core principle of communing with God, that is what works for everyone. But how that applies, that's going to be different for everyone.
Such an easy kind of ditch to fall into, of like, just give me the checklist, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're alluding to, Caleb. He's not saying, okay, prove yourself, do these 2 or 3 things, and then
that's easier,
I'll redeem
that's
you.
easier to teach. Like, it's a slippery slope, not just a ditch, because it could be easy to get up there and say 5 index cards Monday through Friday, put them on your mirror, and all that stuff. Whereas maybe you hear an organic story of somebody who has done that, and it's been fruitful in their life, and then you start to consider, wow, there's a lot of implementations.
Here's the recipe for success.
You could talk about the difference between application and implementation all you want, but that's the beauty of looking at the text and then raising our value of he's mighty Messiah. We haven't even got to the suffering servant part yet, really, but to see him sacrificial already with his time is foreshadowing.
But that is a good application of just, God, give me the desire. Because each of one of us, if we're honest, there's a point where we don't have the desire,
right?
And so to essentially, God, let me just pray to you, just help shape my desire
and we
to
don't
grow in understanding.
I don't think we pray for it.
Right.
We wait around for the desire to slap us in the face, or it could be so easy. Every 4 months you hit a spiritual high. I work in youth with Micah, and these teenagers, you take them on a retreat, you can see a spiritual high. They go on a mission trip, spiritual high. That's all good and great, but it can be very easy to wait around for desire to spark up. Whereas, what a humble thing from Mark Carey to ask, of just like, ask for a heart to do it. Don't wait for one. And so it's this cool thing where it is the Lord going to work. And when he's the origin of our growth instead of ourselves, that's where it
and that's the key word, the humility component of it, of just being able to recognize, I don't have that desire. And God, I don't even know if I want that desire, but help me. I mean, you can get to that level too, of like, I don't even want to pray for that.
I don't want to go this
then
deep.
What is God going to do for my life to shake me up? So there's that, just that holding on and control that we will always just grab onto. That is, we still need to release those things to the Lord and say, God, give us that desire. Shape me into what you want me to be, not what I want myself to be.
It's good. Do you want to ask us about?
Yeah. So, Micah, you're here in part because we want to set the stage of what it really looks like to be in that table, that seat right there.
You're in that chair in a couple weeks,
you
buddy.
are going to be in the pulpit in a couple weeks. So you've been a part of this teaching team. Mark's been alluding to that here in the podcast for several weeks now. Caleb, you're on it, and Tim Sanford. So what does it look like for you to be in this teaching team, studying every week, in preparation for hitting the pulpit? What have you gotten out of the series so far, and how has it grown you?
Well, it's really a joy and a privilege and humbling too, to be on that team. Like, got a lot of respect for Caleb, Mark, Tim, and it's just really, really enjoyable to be on that team. And we meet once a week, and we're studying through Mark together. So whoever is preaching in a few weeks, we kind of work in advance, and whoever's preaching will lead that study. But we've all studied the passage in advance and can give input on the direction of the sermon, can ask questions. Well, what do you mean by that? Or how are you going to illustrate that? How are you going to apply that? And it's just really helpful to work alongside everyone. And again, got so much respect for these guys on this team, and very excited to just learn as much as I can, and looking forward to be preaching in a couple weeks.
And I value teams. I mean, in my many worlds that I swim in, it really began years ago with the worship planning team that really shaped my viewpoint of how a team can contribute and add more depth than just one single person. So this is a new concept for us here at FBC, and we will share more about that in the upcoming fellowship family meeting this coming Sunday night. So quick plug for that. At 6 o'clock, come out so you can hear more about the idea of where this teaching team came from and where it's going to be going to the future and what that looks like for transitions of our body. But, if one single person is just doing all the studying, you're going to get good results. But if there's 3 others who are contributing and collaborating together, I think there's bonus benefit to our congregation of what the teaching will bring and shape. And just having 4 different voices from the pulpit for this series of Mark just gives the different fresh perspectives, in my opinion, of how you're coming at passages, what the applications really look like and mean, just the tones and intonations. I mean, Mark is a historian. He loves bringing out history. Tim is a great storyteller. I mean, Caleb, you have the passion. Micah, we're excited to see what you're going to bring. So
I thought he was going to say, Caleb, you're on the team as well.
With all the cultural relevancies out there. So I think there's just a lot of excitement that's buzzing amongst the staff, seeing what's happening, and we want to have that overflow to the congregation, so there can be an excitement for what each of you guys bring to the pulpit, and not a fear or anxiety of, Mark's not in the pulpit today, what are we going to get? I think you can trust this process to know that each Sunday when there's going to be a sermon to be had is coming from a lot of study, a lot of preparation, a lot of prayer, a lot of depth, and now collaboration.
Yeah,
right?
Well, it makes me think of 1 Corinthians 1. There's problem in the church, people saying, I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos, I'm of Peter. And it's like, I mean, God is working through each of us. And ultimately, it's not about the person in the pulpit. It's about what the person's talking about, which is Christ. And that's got to be the focus. And we all know people have different learning styles. And as a team, the goal is, we can impact everyone in our body as God is using each of us in our own unique personality, communication style, as we are presenting Christ in the scriptures.
And it reminds me too of that. I mean, if iron's going to sharpen iron in our lives and in our community groups, and as the going gets rough in our lives, so too iron can sharpen iron in a teaching context, in a preparation context. It's very cool that no matter which of the 4 of us is up there, we all kind of get to study it together and specifically get bought in and excited for whatever's going to be taught that week, so that there is some ownership of that ministry across the 4 of us, and it really does reinforce that narrative that what is being preached is going to matter more than who is doing it. And so it's been fun to be a part of that.
Yep. So once again, this coming Sunday, 6 o'clock, the fellowship family meeting with dessert afterwards. Plan on just like an hour and 15 minutes to cover not just this pulpit concept, but other transitions that have occurred in the past that we're kind of the leaderships are thinking through right now, and then maybe the vision of what that looks like and holds for FBC down the road.
Yeah.
So,
and let me just add to that plug, it's a big church. It can be so confusing and hard to tell what's going on and when. It can be hard to even tell who is on staff, who isn't, who was, who may be. A lot of the staff is going to get a focus, and specific transitions that have happened and are happening will be the subject of discussion in an effort to show the congregation what's going on. So that this Sunday at 6 p.m. will be your opportunity to hear that, field all that.
And we know that God's been faithful throughout the past transitions, so we're going to hear those stories, which then can give you that just encouragement and that hope for the future. And that's what God does to us through Scripture. We look to the past and His faithfulness and say, oh yeah, He can get me through the times now, and I can look to the future and know that He's going to continue to lead and guide me. Same thing holds true for FBC.
Yeah,
it's good. Micah, you did good. You're allowed back.
Thanks, Caleb.
Mark, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, brother. As a reminder to our viewers and listeners, remember that we love to hear from you. You can send over your thoughts or questions at fbcva.org/podcast. You can find our other 2 podcast channels there as well. The fact of the matter, everybody, is that sermons are not meant to just take an hour, but rather transform a lifetime. Until next week, much love. God bless.